So dear students, welcome back to the course Digital Signal Processing. So today we are going to continue with the design of IER filters. So we have seen in the last class the introduction of IER filters, where we studied that the IER filters are recursive filters. So recursive filters in the sense the output depends upon the past outputs also, rather than depending only on the input. The output depends on past outputs also. So in that case, the impulse response never decays. That is the relation impulse response. In some ways we can call it as the relationship between the input and output. The impulse response never becomes zero. So that is called as an infinite impulse response filters. So we are going to see about the design of infinite impulse response filters in the today's class. So to repeat that, FIR filters are non-recursive filters. That is the output depends only on the inputs. Maybe the past, present or whatever it is, the output depends only on the inputs. So there is no feedback in case of an FIR filter. So there is no infinite impulse response. There is only finite impulse response. But in the case of infinite impulse response filters, the impulse response never decays. Why? Because the relationship between the output and input is always there because of the feedback. So if you think of the analog filters involving resistors and capacitors, the capacitors have memory which never decays. So the past output is always there. So the infinite impulse response filters, how we are going to design that we are going to see. So automatically we related the IR filters to analog filters. Okay. So IR filters are directly related to analog filters. Today we are going to see the design of digital IR filters also. So what is an IER filter? The filter is designed by considering all the infinite samples of impulse responses. Suppose you imagine that the impulse response has infinite samples starting from 0 to infinity. Infinite samples are there. So considering all those impulse responses, if we design the filter or the system, then that is called as the infinite impulse response filters. So IER filters. So let us have a recapitulation of what is the impulse response. Impulse response is nothing but you have a system H for which if you are providing the input del of n, that is the very basic signal is given as the input to the system. How the system responds, that output is called as the impulse response, that is called as H of n. You know very well basically from the previous course, previous semester's course signals and system itself, what is in the impulse response is known very well. Impulse response is nothing but when the input is del of n, the very basic signal, that is the value of the signal is equal to 1, that is 0 only. So what is the output produced? That is called as the impulse response. So you can see here the impulse response is very much finite. So this is a finite impulse response. On the other hand, if you have infinite impulse responses and you are considering all the infinite impulse responses for design of a filter, then that filter is called as the IER filter. In digital form, so again next we are going to discuss about the difficulty in designing a IER filter. What is the difficulty in designing an IER filter? A digital form IER filter cannot be designed directly. So suppose you imagine, so this is a finite impulse response we are seeing. Infinite impulse response is from minus infinity to plus infinity. Infinite impulse responses are there. So in that case, a design of digital IER filter is not possible because you need to specify the values at each point. Each point up to infinity you need to specify the values. So the design of digital IER filters is not at all possible. What we can do, finite analog filters. In case of analog filters, instead of taking individual samples, what we can think is we can think as a function, a continuous function, and we can design that function h of s. But here in this case, h of z, designing h of z directly is very difficult. So that's what a point I wanted to say. In digital form, the processing of infinite samples of impulse response is practically not possible. That's what I told. Hence, direct design of IER digital filters is not possible. So what we have to do, first we have to design an IER analog filter, from which you can go for the design of an IER digital filter. So that's what we are going to see today. So the same point is repeated here also. So what about the stability? Stability in the sense we studied in Z transform and also in Laplace transform. For dealing with the systems that deal with the continuous time signals, we go for the Laplace transform and the S-plane. For the systems which deal with the discrete time signals, we go for the Z transform and the Z-plane. So now we combining these, so converting the S-plane to Z-plane. That is what is converting H of S to H of Z. And analog, so before going to all those things, when analog filter is said to be stable, you may be knowing from the basics of your Laplace transform, The analog filter is stable if the poles fall in the left half of the S plane. So this is your S plane. The S plane is drawn taking as alpha plus j omega. So alpha and j omega. Alpha along the real axis and j omega along the imaginary axis. You may ask what is this and what is this. So if you see the Laplace transform formula, there is a term called S. That is actually the kernel. The real part of the kernel, S, is called as sigma, and the imaginary part of the kernel, that is called as the j omega. This is analog frequency. If you write like this, this is called as the analog frequency. So if the poles fall within the left side of the S plane, then the system is said to be stable. Otherwise, it is said to be unstable. So this is with respect to your H of S or Laplace transform or continuous time systems. Whereas what about the discrete time Z plane? In the Z plane also again you take the real part of Z and the imaginary part of Z. So how the mapping is done? So here what are the conditions for stability in the sense? If the poles fall inside the unit circle, so this is called as a unit circle. So if the poles are within the unit circle, you know very well what is the pole and all. I need not repeat it again. If the poles fall very well within the unit circle, then that is said to be a stable system. Otherwise, if the poles are falling outside the unit circle, then that is said to be a unstable system. So how the mapping is done here means the j omega axis. The j omega axis is taken as this unit circle, whereas the left hand side of the j omega axis, that is taken inside the circle, and obviously the right hand side of the j omega axis, that is taken as the outside of the unit circle. So here the mapping between S plane and Z plane is being done. So an analog filter is stable if the poles fall in the left half of the Z plane. A digital filter is stable if the poles lie inside the unit circle. That's what we have seen. So that is what is a transformation. The axis of the S plane should map onto the unit circle in the Z plane. This provides a direct relationship between the frequencies in S plane and the Z plane. So whatever I told, everything is being given here. So these transformation techniques are done by two important methods. That is called the impulse invariance transformation and the bilinear transformation. The transformation from H of S to H of Z. So impulse invariance transformation. So again the introduction for impulse invariance transformation is given. A technique for digitizing an analog filter. So that's what we are going to do obviously. H of S to H of Z conversion. Digitizing an analog filter is impulse invariance transformation. The objective of the filter method is to develop an IR digital system by sampling an IR analog impulse response. So what is an analog impulse? The mapping formula from impulse invariance transformation from S to Z is given by this formula. So what is H of S? So H of S is 1 by S minus Pi. You know that Pi is nothing but the pole. So this is the typical formula of a typical form of a Laplace transform. So 1 divided by S minus Pi. Pi is the pole. When will this system become unstable? The system becomes unstable when you substitute some value for S. So that H of S becomes infinite. So when it will become infinite? So if you put the value of pole to S, the diagram, you put S is equal to Pi, then that value will make the system unstable. Similarly, see here, for e power Pi t, what we can do, if you put Z is equal to e power Pi t, this will become e power minus Pi t, so that what happens is this and this getting cancelled, it will become 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0, so H of Z becomes infinity. So then the system becomes unstable in the digital domain, in the Z domain. So the equation shows that the analog pole S is equal to Pi is mapped into the digital pole Z is equal to e power Pi t. So whatever I told, if you substitute Z is equal to e power Pi t, this will become unstable. So we are seeing the extreme conditions for mapping the Z and the S. So what we can say is, since S is equal to Pi, we have derived it here. To substitute here that one here in the digital system. So Z is equal to e power st. Where S is equal to sigma plus j omega. That you know already. S is nothing but the Laplace transform kernel, which is equal to sigma plus j omega. The real part of S and the imaginary part of S. So then Z in the polar form we are writing. Z is equal to R e power j omega is the polar form. So then we are saying that this omega is the analog frequency, whereas this omega is the digital frequency. As you can see, this omega corresponds to Laplace, then this is analog frequency, and this omega is the digital frequency. So the general characteristics of mapping, so you are taking this equation, Z is equal to e power st, then what happens is you are substituting for this Z is equal to R e power j omega, and e power st in the sense for s you are substituting this sigma plus j omega. Then you are equating the real and imaginary part. If you equate the real part, r is equal to e power sigma t. R is equal to e power sigma t and omega is equal to omega t. So this is what is the very clearly the impulse invariance transformation is going to do. Mapping the frequencies, mapping the analog frequencies to digital frequencies. Where what is this capital T? It is very important to note. The capital T is nothing but the sampling interval. Sampling interval or amplitude. So then, anyhow, these are nothing but only mapping the frequencies. Then coming to the real part of the system. So if you have multiple poles, so this is the formula for converting h of s to h of z. If the h of s is of this form with multiple poles, then you have to use this formula. If the h of s is with complex poles, then you have to use this formula. Conversion from h of s to h of z. So these are all the standard formulas involved in the impulse invariance method. So you have to use this to convert h of s to h of z. So this forms only a part of the conversion from h of s to h of z. There are so many other things have to be concerned. So we are talking almost the last point, converting from h of s to h of z. So many things, other things are to be done. What are they? Let us see. To understand that what are the other things we have to be doing. For that we need to discuss about the different parameters in the h of s. The impulse, the magnitude response of a low pass filter. Suddenly we are going for Butterworth low pass filter and all, because for the first case study we are going to take the Butterworth low pass filter. So before that, let us see this also. So increasing the order of the filter, as you know, by increasing the order of the filter, the practical frequency response characteristics can become equal to the ideal characteristics. For example, n is equal to 2 means the practicality is very much deviating from the ideal response, whereas if you come for n is equal to 18, so more and more resembling towards the original frequency response. So when you take a single frequency response, what are all the different parameters you need to understand? Of course, the 3 dB gain 1 by square root 2 or minus 3 dB from the maximum value. It is called as a 3 dB gain. So if you connect the 3 dB gain, so this is called as a cutoff frequency of the system, cutoff frequency of the filter. Apart from the cutoff frequency, you have the pass band edge frequency and the stop band edge frequency. Because this is a low pass filter, this is called as the pass band and this is called as the stop band. So this is called as the pass band edge frequency, this is called as the stop band edge frequency. How to identify the pass band edge frequency and stop band edge frequency? So every filter has its own attenuation, pass band attenuation and stop band attenuation. From the maximum value, if you reduce the pass band attenuation, so this is called as a del P, that is called as the del P means the gain, pass band gain of the filter. See, this is del S, stop band gain of the filter. So these are all the parameters. That's what we have to see. Pass band attenuation, stop band attenuation, del P. Epsilon. So the del P is calculated from the formula 1 by square root of 1 plus epsilon square. So epsilon is a parameter specifying allowable pass band. Similarly, lambda is a parameter specifying allowable stop band. Likewise, these are all the important parameters we need to be concerned. So as I told you, to design a digital filter, you have to first successfully design an analog filter. So this is what is the design of the analog filter. So to design an analog filter, multiple parameters are involved. So what are they? So almost h of s to h of z transformation comes as the last step. Okay, before that what we need to do? So what are the different steps? Let us see. First what we have to do, the first step is finding out, the first and foremost important step is finding out the edge frequencies, pass band and stop band edge frequency. That is omega p and omega s. After that you have to find out the order of the filter, capital N order of the filter you need to find out, and then you are going to find out the cutoff frequency. Then only you are going to find out h of s and you are going to transform that h of s to h of z. This transformation of h of s to h of z only involves the impulse invariant transformation. So what are the steps? So that is called the algorithm to design a digital Butterworth filter. So digital filter specifications. So first we have in the question, digital filter specifications are there. Since you cannot design directly a digital filter, you are going to convert the digital filter specifications to analog filter specifications. After that, design the analog filter h of s and convert the h of s to h of z. You know very well, here only importantly the impulse invariance transformation or bilinear transformation is going to involve. After that, realization of the digital filter. Realization of the digital filter in the sense, whatever h of z you got, drawing it as a block diagram. drawing it as with the delays and taps. That is called as the realization. Taps are nothing but the multipliers. So we are going to realize a digital filter not with resistors and capacitors. We are going to realize a digital filter with whatever h of z function you obtained. The z inverse that are typically there in the h of z, they are called as the delays. And whatever there are the coefficients. For example, z inverse multiplied by 3. So 3 z inverse. So there z inverse is nothing but a delay element, and 3 is nothing but the coefficient factor. So you are going to realize the digital filter like that. So convert the digital frequencies to analog frequencies. So again I repeat. So why sir, why we want a digital frequency converted to analog frequency? We are designing a digital filter only. If you arise that question, I can directly say that analog filters can only be first directly designed for a IR system. So how to obtain the analog frequency? So the impulse invariance method. So before that, what is written? All these things you already know. So the passband frequency, this is analog. So this is the digital frequency that is given. This is the digital stopband frequency. This is given. Passband attenuation and stopband attenuation are given. What is the formula for designing the digital frequency? Omega is equal to omega divided by t, capital T. Where capital T is nothing but the sampling period, sampling interval or sampling period. So omega is equal to omega divided by t. So for impulse invariance method and the bilinear transformation, two different methods are there. And what is the additional thing in the bilinear transformation compared with the impulse invariance method? We'll see later. But today we are seeing on the impulse invariant method only. So after determining the edge frequencies, passband edge frequency and stopband edge frequency, I told the second step would be to find out the order of the filter. So to find out the order of the filter, again we are recollecting what are all the different terms. Omega p we just now found out. From this omega s and omega p, we found out omega p and omega s, and alpha p and alpha s are also given in the problem. So either they will give anything, because to design a filter, they have to give any one of this. So omega s, omega p should be given, and after that either alpha p, alpha s should be given, or del p, del s should be given, or epsilon and lambda should be given. So any parameter corresponding to this values should be given. It can be alpha p and alpha s. Both should be given. Alpha p and alpha s should be given. Then you can design the filter to find out the order of the filter. These parameters may be directly useful to find out the order of the filter. Or del p and del s should be given. Or epsilon and lambda will be given. So in any case, in any these three situations, you can determine the order of the filter. So to determine the order of the filter, there are three formulas. That is, as I told, alpha s and alpha p may be given, del p and del s may be given, lambda and epsilon may be given. So whenever they are given, we have to substitute this omega s and omega p. So what is given in the problem, sir? Omega, this digital values are given. In the previous step, you are converting that to analog values, omega s and omega p. Now whatever is given in the problem, that you are directly substituting here and finding out the value of capital. So as I told, that the first step is about determining the omega s and omega p, the passband and stopband edge frequencies. Next, finding out the order of the filter. After that, the cutoff frequency you will find out. But before that, there is one more step. That is, what is the polynomial for a Butterworth filter? As we are designing a Butterworth low pass filter, what is a polynomial? This step is nothing but if it is a first order filter, there is only one pole. There are two poles here. So this is a second order filter. Likewise, for different order filters, these are all the standard transfer functions. Of course, there is a separate formula to find out the transfer function of the filter. But even before that, what we are going to do is, we are going to say, instead of to avoid that elaborate steps, for a Butterworth filter, already the value of the transfer function has been reduced for order 1 and order 2 and all. So that we can directly use, we have the liberty to directly use that. So anyhow, when doing the formula, we will see by directly using this or by using the formula how to deduce this as h of s and all, we will see. So after that, I told the next step will be to find out the cutoff frequency. The cutoff frequency is given by the formula omega p. This is the passband edge frequency. Alpha p is the attenuation, and n is nothing but the order we just found out. And after that, we have to finalize the analog transfer function h of s you have to finalize. So all these steps will be more significantly understood only when we directly do this problem. We are seeing the illustration and you may not be having the connection between one step to next step, but when you are doing the problem you can be easily understanding. So what are the different steps? Step 1 is to find out the omega p and omega c. Given the digital frequencies, digital crossband frequency and stopband active frequency, you are going to find out the analog crossband and the stopband active frequency. The second step is you found out the order of the filter capital N. Then by substituting the first step and second step values, that is omega p, omega s values and the n value, you found out the cutoff frequency. That is the fourth step. What is the third step? You have the standard formulas for h of s. There is a transfer function h of s for a Butterworth filter. If it is a low pass filter, the standard formula applies here. Analog Butterworth low pass filter, the standard formula. If it is a one pole filter or a first order filter, these are the standard formulas for the transfer function. After doing that, what we have to do is, suppose you are converting from an analog low pass filter to digital low pass filter, you can use this formula s divided by omega c. Or you are converting from low pass to high pass, that has to be reversed, omega c divided by s. There are also formulas to convert from low pass to band pass and band stop and all. We are not complicating too much. Today we will restrict the discussion only with this. And after that, the last step is, of course, whatever we discussed at the beginning, converting the h of s directly to h of z. So well and good. You have designed the capital H of s. How to convert the capital H of s to capital H of z? That is what is given here. So the pole value is there, means substitute that value here in this formula. So that is what is as per the impulse invariance filter. We have several formula also, whereas we discuss only one formula here. For multiple poles and the complex poles and all we discussed here. So we are using only one simple thing here. So that is by using the impulse invariance filter we design a IR filter. IR analog filter is converted to IR digital filter.